the podcast for the 3D printing enthusiasts, the resin fiends, and the filament addicts. I'm your host, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parent. I'm joined by
Kristen Sowards, also known as Lost Spheres.
And we're also joined today by a very special guest, Andrea from CobraMode, one of the most fantastically artful miniature companies I know of in the industry. Hey, hello, Andrea. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing great. So for people who might not know who you or CobraMode are, could you give us a little bit of a sales pitch, a little 30-second elevator pitch?
Sure. So CobraMode Miniatures, we're a husband and wife team. So my husband, Aaron McClellan, he does all of the 3D sculpting. And then I run the business side. I do some of the concepting and, consulting, graphics, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say that your stuff really stands apart. I mean, that's in one look at the models and the art that you all do. It's just unlike anything anybody else is doing. You've got really dynamic poses. You've got these unique characters, lots of moth people, lots of amphibians. There's a not an armadillo. What is it? Not an armadillo.
Pangolin.
The pangolin.
Yeah.
I love the pangolin so much. It's so cute. And then the pack snail. There's so much to go on to. So in a world full of Grimdark, why has CobraMode gone in a completely different direction, even if it is absolutely beautiful?
Well, so this Patreon kind of started from my husband, and he has been sculpting in some capacity for a long time, and it's really his style that's coming through. So it's, he's really influenced by like confrontation, anime, manga, like cartoons, Ninja Turtles, everything, all of those things kind of mixed together to create this style. Plus, it's like a little bit of my character design background and stuff like that mixing into the whole thing as well.
So you mentioned the character design background. Could you give us a little bit about your background? Like, how did you get into gaming, and why did you all decide to become a company?
So there are two big questions. I'll start with, how did I get into gaming, or how did me and Aaron get into gaming?
Sure.
So I think way back when I was 13, my brother started playing StarCraft, and that was like a big online game. So I started playing, and through StarCraft, I like joined a clan. And through my StarCraft clan, people were like, "Hey, do you want to play D&D online with us?" And that's how I started. I started by playing online with people I'd never met before.
Did you use a virtual tabletop, or was it just by voice or chat? Or?
It was just by chat. I think we were using IRC.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Old school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, so that was my start.
Did you start running, or how did that lead into the world creation bit? Because I know you do a lot of the lore for this, right?
Yeah, I'm the writer for the lore. I didn't DM any sessions, actually. I really just liked being a part of other people's campaigns and just like playing a character within that, and kind of sometimes being really annoying and testing the boundaries of what is possible. But yeah, I've always really liked narrative stuff. I always really liked video games and RPGs and things like that. So narrative is really a big part of my background and why I wanted to become a character designer initially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. Do you have a consistent sort of Bible for it, or is it just sort of thing like I guess I'm really fascinated about the lore. I was one of your patrons, and it's why I sought you out, and so of course I'm fanboying a little bit, getting to get this back screen sort of view of how it all kind of came together. So
yeah, so we have this whole document called the Cobra Compendium, and because before I was kind of writing little snippets for each character, but it wasn't all contained within one place. And people were like, wow, the lore is so interesting, but we have to go through this Patreon format, which is really annoying. So I put it all into this Google Doc, and it ended up being like 40 pages of lore after all of this stuff.
nice. Very cool.
So you mentioned being a character designer. Was that what before CobraMode? Were you a character designer professionally?
Well, I went to school to be a character designer originally because I wanted to work in video games. And so I was working in video games for a little while, but it wasn't really working for me. I switched careers about 10 years ago and I became a fashion designer. So, so I was a fashion designer for 10 years, but then the COVID hit and I got laid off from my job. And my husband at that time was getting really into 3D printing, like just a few months before that. And him having a sculpting background, he was thinking like, man, I could just print my own stuff. I could just, start sculpting things and start playing Frostgrave. And then, so he got really into making the minis and printing them. And then he never played Frostgrave. We just started a Patreon.
Oh, this sounds like me. I bought all the Frostgrave books and yet to play it.
Yeah. So yeah, we started a Patreon instead.
I think that's probably a healthier attitude at the end. I mean, like, I love wargaming, but boy, does it hit the pocketbook. Yeah. Now, so your husband had a sculpting background, and you had a design background. So what was the background of your husband then? Like professional sculpture for video games too? Is that how you all met?
Well, he's sort of just been doing 3D for a really long time. Like when he was maybe like 20 years ago, he was just playing around with 3D sculpting, but he never really got a job doing it. He was just playing around and then sculpting on his own. And he sculpted physical miniatures and stuff like that, but he never showed anybody. So it was this like deep interest of his that never became a career until a little while ago, maybe like 5 years ago. He started doing a little bit of stuff for games, and he worked with Robot Loves Kitty and created this weird game called Upsilon Circuit. Yeah, I don't think it ever really got released, but he made the art for it. And but since then, after that, they kind of like the company kind of stopped working on it, and then he wasn't really getting work doing game stuff. And so he was trying to think about like, oh, what are some other ways? Like he loves doing the 3D sculpting, as you can see. So he was just trying to find a way to start doing it on his own without needing a whole team of people to like make a game and then have that team eventually fall apart.
Yeah.
So what?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, when I talked to him on Patreon, I just loved the attitude he was saying. Sorry, I threw on Discord. He was saying, we just make things and we don't really care if they exist. Like so many times you see like a beholder or whatever, and it's totally cool when people do that, but like just ideate completely new terrain. I was kind of curious. Some of the stuff kind of has a scientific naming convention influence. Does one of you have a biology background, or where did that come from? Just understanding like the animals themselves as the basis, or?
Well, when I'm writing the lore and doing the naming, and sometimes when we're doing the character development, I'm looking for a lot of different influences. So I might go all the way into like full scientific names for things to get an interesting naming scheme out of it, or I might go into a completely different culture and look for inspiration there. But really, I'm just like casting a huge wide net, seeing what is interesting and cool that comes out of it, and then I just kind of pick and choose through those things.
So what was it like early on when you all decided, hey, we're going to try to make this Patreon thing go, or we're going to try to make miniatures and sell them online? Like, explain this to, like, what was it like when you're all making that choice?
Well, it was, first he kind of pitched the idea to me before the whole pandemic thing hit, because he was going to stop. He was working as a scenic artist before, so he was building like physical sets and making sculptures. And then that was a crazy job. He was working like 19 hours a day. The deadlines were always like yesterday and stuff. So he was like, I have to get out of this. And he was like, one of his friends was making miniatures, or small, not miniatures, but like smaller, maybe 12-inch scale sculptures. And so his friend at this job was saying like, man, you could totally start sculpting miniatures. And then he's like, oh, I should try. And he started researching it. He found all these other people doing it, like Artisan Guild and MZ 4250. And then he's like, well, I bet I could make a Patreon and do the same thing. So he was like, yeah, take a look at these guys that are doing this. And I was like, yeah, try, quit your job and try it. Let's figure it out.
So you're so supportive, like just go ahead and quit the job and go right from then?
Yeah, well, the job was killing him, so
okay. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Like it was physically killing him. Like it was not good for his body at all. So I was like, yes.
Scenic work for movies, or what are they for, if you don't mind me asking?
It was for pretty much anything that needed custom fabrication. So if like we were in New York City, so there were a lot of fashion shows, a lot of commercials being shot, or even just like somebody wanted custom cabinetry, but it was like very ornate or something. So they just had them come in, like they had artists come in and do it. Yeah. Oh, museum exhibits, that kind of thing. Like he did a lot of crazy things. Like
like big scale stuff.
Yeah, large scale things. So
wow. Okay. I thought you were talking like
sets,
little mini like scenes and stuff. So he was doing big set work.
No, it was like physical sets. One of them was a corgi palace for it was like something about like corgis, the queen or something. It was a commercial, and they built a palace, and like little corgis dressed up as the royals were like running through it and stuff. It's so cute.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, New York City, and you were like, just quit your job and do this. Man, that is impressive. Wow. Very cool.
Life at your place must be awesome. Like 2 designers and with fantastic backgrounds like this. Like the creative energy that you two must have together must just go off the charts.
I don't know. I think we put it all into the Patreon right now, and we're also building a bus because Aaron had this crazy idea. Well, we can't live in New York City with this income because it's just crazy. The rent is insane. So for a while we lived in Colombia. Last year for about 6 months we were just hanging out in Colombia. Aaron's brother is down there, so we just kind of went to visit him, went around a little bit. It was very cheap and the weather was nice. And then right now we're in Minnesota, and Aaron was like, well, we could go traveling around the United States, and we could just be in an RV and just travel around. So we bought a bus and we're converting it to an RV, and
like an old school bus.
I've
seen people do that.
It's a shuttle bus. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a small shuttle bus. So it's not quite as big as a school bus, but it's a similar concept.
And you're just going to kind of do like the tiny house on wheels sort of thing with it?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Cool. So percentage of the bus that's going to be 3D printed, do you have an estimate?
So far, none of the bus is 3D printed. But if we got a big enough 3D printer, maybe.
We need to go to Maker Faire, find one.
Yeah.
All right.
So you mentioned scenic background. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's cool. The scenic background and doing the big stuff. But is he the one that does the bases, or do you do the concept work for the bases? Because your scenic bases, your decorative bases are amazing. Like I would even recommend people who just need various bases to check out your bases, and possibly even like sign up for your Patreon just for that alone. Like there's so many different wonderful bases. Do you do the concept? Does he, or you collaborate, or how does that work?
So actually the bases are now all done by one of our freelancers, the Beta Marie.
Okay.
Oh.
And so we actually give her very little input. Like we show her we show her the development sculpts as we're going for the month prior. And then we just let her go crazy because she's a patron of ours as well. And she just knows the style. She has this really fun sense of composition and everything. And she just, she goes wild and does her thing. And then we get awesome bases at the end.
Yeah, some of them are it's just crazy. So cool like that, and just on theme. So that's neat that a collaborator's got your style kind of nailed and zeroed in like that.
Yeah, she's very unique. I really appreciate her.
Very cool.
So how was your work really received, like when you first entered the space? Because you all got in fairly early, and I remember when your stuff first started showing up on my mini factory, it caught my eye immediately. I was like, oh, somebody's doing something very different. And like I can't map your critters to most of the monster manual or to the like, how many people are doing goblins and skeletons and stuff right now, and you've got the biggest mouth kitty in the world being ridden around by I don't know what with Snuffleupagus in the background. I mean, I don't mean to demean these. I mean, like, this is crazy and fantastical and original, and how was it received?
Well, I guess it was pretty well received. I think like when we started the Patreon, I was kind of like being the super realist, and I was like, we're probably not going to do very well, judging by what the landscape was like. Like when we launched, it was March. It was like literally the start of the pandemic, and I think every Patreon at that time was doing dwarves, and then we released like a frogman with a giant glaive, like a huge fat frogman, and a guy from this line, actually. These are the reindeer men, the Ariche, and what was the other one? I can't remember, but we just had like stuff that had nothing to do with anything, and we're like, we're probably not going to get any patrons this month. But I just felt like I believed in what Aaron made, because he's an amazing sculptor. He never showed anybody his sculpts, but I always like he would show me his sculpts, and I'd be like, why don't you ever show anyone? And he would say, oh, it's just not done yet. It's not done yet.
I mean, the level, like the level of detail and dynamic posing, like the skill is off the charts here. It's like, did he have like a formal art background before getting into this?
So he went to an arts high school, but I don't think he ever went to an art college after that. Like he never did post-secondary. So all of his 3D stuff is self-taught. That's just him doing stuff by himself obsessively.
I totally get it's not done though. Like, both as a game designing person myself and art I've done, and I'm married to a quilter, and it's always, you got to get that point where done is better than perfect, because you'll fuss with things forever if you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they imply such a world, and I want to delve into that. I also don't want to put you necessarily on the spot, but like, do you like have a map or anything, or is this still just mostly the lore book that you're talking about on Google Drive?
We kind of have a map. We made like a rough sketch of one, and then we wanted to make a real map, but it keeps changing. So
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, we do sort of like have an idea of where these people are in the world that they live in, and how they relate to each other, and like sort of an overarching like thing that ties the whole world together.
Do you mind elucidating any of that, or just?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, I would love to hear it. Any world or nation breakdown or whatever, any of it.
Yeah, so all of them are arranged into factions. So right now we've started to do themed releases, and they're usually going to be surrounding like a geographic location that's in our world. So like this month is the Kutuga steppe, which is like a Mongolia kind of highland steppe area. And then there's these forests that are also a part of it, that are where the pigs come from, the boars. So the boars live in the forested areas, and then the reindeer men live in the grassland areas.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's like one of our factions. And then our biggest faction, I would say, is like the Mikata wetlands, which is the Asian-inspired frogs.
Okay.
And they're not very close to the Kutuga steppe. I think they're probably on the other side of a mountain range. And so we have a mountain range where the Yetis live, and the Tengus. those people are living in that mountain range that's between the Mikata swampland and the Kutuga steppe. What are the other? Oh man, I have
Don't
to
you have
look
like
at my
a
other
duck,
things.
a duck lady on like a palanquin, like a
Oh
duck?
yeah, so we have the ducks. Those are the yuan yang, and
Uh-huh.
so they also live close to the Mikata wetlands. They're in like a marshy area next to it.
Like
So
on
there's
by the frogs.
yeah, over by the frogs. And then there's another what are they? Yeah, there's another swampy place which is the Somos, the former Somos Empire actually. So and that one is all of the fishmen and the eel and stuff like that. Those guys were from there.
You had kind of like it was almost like a basilisk looking thing. It was really big. I can't say his name, Rekros or something. Or was it? I don't know.
Basilisk guy.
Well, he's like a lizard chicken monster. He's really big.
Oh, the Rakos. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that was from the Yuanyang month. Yeah. He was with the ducks.
And there's like the little knight charging him on a
Mhm.
mount, I think. That was very cool.
One of the ones that really stand out to me are the Mothfolk. I don't you call them the Noctua. I'm sorry, Noctuadea.
Noctuidea. Yeah, the Noctuidea.
Yeah.
Yes, the Noctuadea. What can you tell me about the Noctuadea? Because they just like floored me when I saw, like, especially this model that you're using at the front, which is this there's this like smaller person surrounded by this absolutely magnificently huge moth with like a crystal halo going on above it.
So the Moth People, actually, this is a really interesting thing because this one, a lot of the sculpts come from basically Aaron will have some random idea and I'll try to flesh it out and
Mhm.
give it more life. But the Noctuidea is actually started from one of my ideas and then grew from there. So we actually played a game of microscope to figure out what this deal is with the Noctuidea. So we came up with this crazy history for them through playing microscope.
What's
And
microscope?
Microscope is sort of like a world building game.
Mhm.
And it has these specific rules, and like you make cards in order to tell a story together. If you haven't
Okay.
seen it, you should definitely look it up because it's really cool. It's a very interesting narrative building thing, and
Okay.
it's not like D&D where you're a character within it. It's like you are coming up with ideas of how the world exists and how it works. Yeah.
Cool. And so you went through that specifically for the Moth People?
Yeah, we went through that for the Moth People just to kind of come up with like what are their motivations and like what's their society like and why is their society the way it is, and that kind of helped us to grow the characters out of. That was like the substrate.
Yeah, that actually straight up, I saw that, and that's why I went and signed up for the Patreon. And then when I saw the bases, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be getting these bases every time they come out. So it's like I definitely want in.
Yeah.
Are they like? Because they seem so majestic. Are they like rulers or something, or what is their relationship to the other people in
So
the world?
the Moth People are actually very insular, but they have this very ancient society, and they actually almost destroyed themselves because they worship the moon, and so that if you look at their history, they have a really long history because of that game of microscope that we played.
Yeah.
But so they worship the moon. Their ancient ancestors had this beautiful society with like palaces, and they were really good at magic. And but then they got greedy and they tried to get more power from the moon, and they ended up pulling the moon. The moon was like an actual goddess, and they pulled the moon into their city, and like she crashed into the city and killed them all and died herself.
Oh no!
And so and so there were like scattered little pockets of them afterwards, and then they're like, okay, no more magic, we were banning this, that was dangerous and terrible. And then but then they had like a reformation period where some of them were like, we need to recover the glory of the past through magic, and the others were like, no, we're not going to. like magic is evil and we almost killed ourselves. So there's actually 2 different factions now. And there's like the Fidelium, who are against magic, and then there's the Noctuidea, who use magic. So yeah.
So are we going to be seeing more Fidelium figs then? Because I don't know. Have we seen a lot of those?
We have seen some. If you look in this same release, actually, there's the Tamer. And the Tamer is a Fidelium. So the Tamer or the Fidelium are more kind of like nature based. So they mutated themselves in order to get the powers that they wanted. And then the Noctuidea use magic to do that instead.
Gotcha.
When I'm looking for miniatures, or I'm finding miniatures in 3D printing art that I want to actually buy and print and stuff, they really are divided into 2 types. One is I'm looking for a good miniature for a need I have. Like, I need a mammoth rider. I happen to need those 8 million those 8 million dwarves they were sculpting, a year and a half ago. And then I run into the other type of mini and honestly, these are the ones that make me smile and glee. And they are when I see the mini and then I need to have a reason, I need to get a reason to use it. And your minis definitely fall in that category, because I see these incredible sculpts, these dynamic, these wonderful characters that feel alive just the moment I even glance at them. They're not stiff. They're like literally like up on tails. They're jumping through the air. They're riding around on moonbeams and floating, and really creative, dynamic, almost diorama level posing. I need to invent a reason to use this in my games. But you provide some of that, don't you? You actually provide stat blocks for 5th edition D&D?
Yeah, so we were thinking when we started the Patreon, that was exactly what we were thinking. Like, oh man, these are so cool, but like, what is anyone going to use them for?
Right.
So we were like, well, oh man, maybe they could use them for D&D. And one of our patrons, actually, one of our first patrons, Ben Green, he made a stat block for us for them. And he's like, these would be so cool in the homebrew campaign, and I want to use them. And like, here's a stat block that I made. And we're like, this is awesome. You should just keep making these, and we're going to give them to the patrons for all of the releases. So that was our attempt anyway at trying to make it like something you can actually use.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like, I haven't had a chance to super dive into them. Are they playable species and races then, or is it more like monster bestiary style?
They're more like monsters, or like an NPC or something like that. It wouldn't be a player character stat.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I really, 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 really want to play one of these.
I was about to say, like,
I need to.
I mean, having run a Kickstarter for a campaign setting before, I smell all the beginnings of one here. I'm just saying, like, have you ever considered doing something like that?
We would love to do that, but the Kickstarter thing is like a whole beast that I'm not really familiar with. So
sure.
I don't really know much about running them. It looks like a really big job though. The other thing is that Aaron only has time to sculpt the collection every month. So actually, like, people are always asking us like, oh, can you do like a commission, or can you do this? There's no time. There's no time.
Absolutely understandable.
If you look like an average release from you all, you have like half a dozen to a dozen characters, including humongous big ones with lots of details, a giant pack of bases, and usually a scenery piece or two, or sometimes giant freaking buildings, because you all have thrown in that. The pangolin has its whole merchant quarter that I love. It's easy to see. So what is the workflow? It's like, hey, it's time to make a set from beginning to end. What does that look like for your team?
So we were flying by the seat of our pants for the longest time, and basically it would be like, so if we work a month ahead. So right now we're working on February. Before we were just like, crap, what ideas do you have right now? And it's like, I don't know, like a moth person, and then And we would just try and like iterate from there. So Aaron would make 3D sketches. Basically, he would just like throw some shapes into 3D and see what comes out of it, and then I would start making sketches and see what comes out of that. So that was really messy for a long time. But now that we've kind of moved to these themed releases, we're trying to be a little bit more organized, and we've got a new concept artist who's been working with us for a few months, Paul Ferret. And basically, we give him ideas, and we'll be like, we need something from like our Kutuga steppe line. You know, they're people who live in the steppe. They look kind of like this. They're nomadic, and they do these things, and they only use flint weapons. And so we kind of give him some guidelines and then let him free, and he gives us sketches, and we'll build off of those usually.
It sounds like you've got this really cool like small team. It's you've got a freelancer helping you with stat blocks. You've got a freelancer helping you with bases. You've got a concept artist. You got a sculptor. You've got an outfit designer and lore person.
Yeah,
like, this is becoming a small company.
Yeah, so we're trying to make it something that's sustainable, because like Aaron as an artist can't just keep sculpting everything by himself. And like as it stands already, he gets like 2 days a month off to do.
Wow.
So, but the funny thing is though, when he gets time off, then he starts sculpting.
That sounds like a creative. That sounds like a creative. You get that you're all fried and burned out, and the second you actually relax, then the idea is like boom, come back.
Yeah,
so.
He's like, you know what? I could be sculpting right now.
Well, how long does it take for like a single character to go from concept art to finished sculpt to you've done the lore to the patron gets it?
It's kind of hard to track it that way, because the concept art kind of all gets done at the same time ahead of the release. So, for example, Paul helped us do all of the stuff last month that we're now starting to sculpt and flesh out this month. So he would spend the whole month though iterating on those concepts, getting feedback and generating ideas, and then it'll take us this entire month to sculpt and like put together the release for next month.
So what are some of the influences that are brought in? Because this is a ton of different cultural influences that I'm seeing. I'm seeing video game influences. So what are some of the influences that you all bring to your releases?
I guess I just kind of bring in everything that is cool that I've ever seen. So, like in order to, so our kind of concept behind CobraMode is that we're trying to make things that are not already there.
Right.
And that's sort of Aaron's desire also as an artist. He doesn't want to make, another dwarf or another goblin or another orc, although he loves orcs, but he's just like, I don't know what I can bring to the orc space that's like fresh and interesting at this point. So he's just kind of stayed away from it for now. But basically to get this like newness and this freshness, we're drawing from anything that we can find. So say we play a video game that's really cool, we might draw some influence from that. We see an anime that's really cool, we might draw some from that. Or I remembered one time I saw this movie that was really neat and had this scene in it with this character, and it's like, well, I'm going to draw that in also.
Very cool. But like you said, you don't have orcs, but like you do have those boar folk, which are kind of that energy, right? Like a little bit. I know so like I think there's analogs, but I think even in the sculpting, you were saying you don't make things that are already existing. You also don't rehash a lot of armatures and things that kind of can tell, because a lot of people like, and I love them all, and I'm not going to name names, but like you can tell it's the same model like reposed 7 times with some new gear. And that's cool if you want to play like a troop game or whatever, but like it's one of the reasons why I'm surprised maybe that the player character stuff hasn't been explored as much, because every single one of them is just so dang unique, and like they just scream like, you're going through I can't say, is it Servade, or I don't know.
The Circle?
I see. I butchered that so bad. The just kind of scream druid energy to me, right? You know, like
yeah.
And yeah, again, like it just feels like something I want to play because it's so unique. You know, you bring to the table, like everybody sits down. Like I'm guilty of the tiefling trope, like sitting down with my, you know, like I'm playing my tiefling, you know, warlock or whatever again. But then like these, I would spend days just figuring out the right characters for the figs. They're so different. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we would love to do player stats. That's not kind of my wheelhouse or Aaron's wheelhouse. So if somebody wants to make player stats for these, like, please, by all means, like, let us know, because that would be amazing. Because a lot of people have asked for playable character stats for these, and we're like, yeah, but I don't know how to do that.
Oh, it sounds like you and Christian need to have a talk later.
Later,
Christian,
maybe
if you didn't
offline.
know, is a professional game designer with multiple Kickstarters
Yes.
under his belt. Who came up with the snail? I love the snail. Like, and honestly, when I saw the snail painted on, was it Miniac or Ninjon that painted the snail?
Is Ninjon.
Ninjon. It was just
Yeah.
like, I had to go buy it immediately.
So this is really funny because Aaron had originally made this snail and it was hideous. It was so ugly. And he was like, but I just love it so much. And I'm like, nobody wants that, Aaron. No one wants that. So he kind of put it like he does this a lot. He'll like randomly make a sculpture and be like, nobody wants this. And then he'll put it kind of in his storage and forget about it. And but then he is like, well, you know what? I really like this snail. I'm going to try and make it cuter and something that people would actually want. So he remade the whole face and everything, made it a whole bunch cuter. And and so that's how that came out. And then he was like, Andrea, I need help like figuring out what's on his back. And so I kind of helped him figure out like, oh, there might be like a pot on him and like stuff like that. So he kept adding these little details until it became this entire sculpt.
Were you responsible for the chicken then?
I was not responsible for the chicken, although there's a lot of lore for the chicken. Actually,
I need to hear the chicken's lore. I need to know this now.
So the patrons actually came up with this lore for the chicken because I'm not sure why, but they really connected with it. So the chicken has a name. It is Sir Ferdinand Peckinfeather III.
I love it.
Yeah, Sir Ferdinand is a weird chicken, but we're not sure if that means that he turns into a man at the full moon or he turns into a chicken at the full moon. But either way, he switches back and forth, but we're not sure which one he was originally. But he is a noble. Like the title Sir Peckinfeather is a real title. He has the papers to back him up.
So are we getting a human form mini of him eventually?
I don't know. The funny thing is that there are no humans in the CobraMode universe.
I was about to say, I've never seen one. So when you said human, I was like, what?
When you first said were-chicken, I'm like, oh, so does he turn into a snail? That'd be great.
Well, that might be the case. I'm not sure.
I mean, he might be a frog person. He might be like, one of the frog people with a chicken lycanthropy. That's amazing. No, that's actually one of the things I actually also noticed very quickly. I was like the absence of the traditional anything, right? Like you can see analogs again. I could see someone like the Moth People might be like your elves or whatever, but it's definitely not, and it's just so unique. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm fanboying out again.
Yeah.
No problem. So we love hearing that.
Yeah. What is the future looking like for CobraMode? You mentioned that you're at capacity. Are you thinking about bringing on more sculptors or what?
I mean, we would love to hire more sculptors. There's always the issue, though, of them being able to get the style right and being able to fit in with the team and having time and being the right cost and everything. So we would definitely love to add more sculptors, but at this point, we haven't found one yet. So any sculptors out there, if you want to do some CobraMode minis.
So you got the minis, the bases, the 5e stats. You all give a discount to your back if you're a patron, right? So what are the patron benefits? Like, why should everybody run out right now and become a Patreon of CobraMode?
Well, so we have our releases every month. They come pre-supported. They come with all of the bases. They come with the lore and the 5e stats. And we also have a Discord where we have lots of really friendly people. I'm sure
it
you
is
found that
very
out.
friendly. I will verify that.
Yeah, and there is a channel for 3D printing and also for 3D modeling and also for painting if you would like. So a lot of artists come in there and share their work, not even just CobraMode stuff, whatever they're working on. And it's a really cool creative place. And I don't know, I think that on its own is like almost a big draw for joining the Patreon.
You can also brag about your Wordle scores.
Yes, that is also an official channel now.
I need to figure out what Wordle is. I keep seeing it. I'm scared to even ask at this point.
I had to do 5 yesterday. I was struggling.
Oh, yesterday was rough.
And the word I actually almost put in, and I was like, nah, it would, it's not that. And
oh no.
Anyway, you did a lot of partnerships recently. You mentioned Ninjon, and then you were on Black Magic Craft, right? Like just recently. How did that come about?
So we did our first. We were looking around for some YouTubers to work with, just because we always need new ways to like get our name out there. And we had first been introduced to Ninjon by Danny, the 3D printing DM. And so we did a little stuff with him. We did some bases for one of his Kickstarters. I think it was Lost Adventures 2. And then we were like, hey, Danny, we need like somebody to help us rep our stuff in the YouTube space. And he's like, oh, I have the perfect person. So he introduced us to Ninjon. And then through that, we just kind of kept it rolling and started doing all these different collaborations with YouTubers.
Very cool.
So what do you think about the 3D printing space right now? You all got in right as COVID happened, and it seems that the COVID period is when it blew up, like when everybody started grabbing printers and hundreds of them. What do you think about the space right now? Where do you think it's going? And where do you see your all's role in it?
Oh, man. So this is such a difficult question because really with COVID, we saw this huge explosion of people staying at home and being able to get a printer and like kind of indulge in their hobbies for the first time in a long time. So we saw this really huge growth of people getting printers. And I'm not sure that that's going to continue on forever, like it's got to slow down at some point, although I don't know if it has yet. But I see, but the printers also keep getting better and cheaper and more easy to use. And so I feel like the whole printing boom is going to keep going. I feel like it's just going to keep slowly gathering steam, and like people are just going to get used to the fact that they can print stuff at home for themselves and start doing this. Yeah.
Or they're going to know a guy or a girl
that
has
exactly.
one, or anybody in their gaming group maybe. So it'll be somebody. Yeah.
So like we've been seeing a lot of people say like, 3D, I'll get into it when they're better than the minis I can buy at the store. They're better than Caster, but they're better in plastic, or they're better than blah, 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 blah. And we finally have printers now that have like the smallest detail you can capture in injective molding is 25 microns. And we now have printers that print 22. So we're there. So all we need to do is make it easier. And hopefully soon full color. When we get full color, will you be like painting the minis and then so that we can print your beautiful paint jobs?
I don't know, because what's really funny is when we're concepting out the sculpts, we don't think about colors at all. So a lot of patrons are asking us like, oh, what color did you think this would be and stuff when they're painting, because they're like, oh, I want to be true to the original. And we're like, we didn't really think about what color it would be. We're thinking more about it as a composition, like when I'm sketching it or I'm drawing it, I'm thinking of it more as like an image than it is than as like what are these individual materials and stuff like that.
Do you think that like lack of guidance is actually a positive because you're allowing people to explore their own creative side with the minis, or ultimately would you offer official guidance if you could, do you think?
I kind of like seeing everybody's individual interpretations of it, because it's sort of like our portion of it, we only thought of that part. And so I want to see where people take it to get it to the next level,
Right. I mean, you must see every month some beautiful paint jobs of your all's work.
Yeah, we've also hired some artists also to do like official box art for us. Oh. And so we've seen some amazing amazing paints of that too. So
and you say box art, are you selling physical copies on Etsy or something, or?
No, we don't sell physical copies, but it's just like an industry term that we co-opted for this. Yeah.
Okay. I was just clarifying. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So where should people go if they want to find more information about CobraMode and sign up and start getting these wonderful snails and pangolins and everything else into their inbox each month?
Well, the first place you should go is CobraMode.com. And you should definitely sign up for our mailing list, because you'll get a free mini when you sign up. And then you can test print it and see how you like our prints before you even have to buy anything. And then from there, you'll get links to either, if you want to buy physical minis, we have links to our partner vendors who sell on like Etsy and eBay. You can also go to My Mini Factory, look for CobraMode, and also on Patreon, of course, with CobraMode.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to shout out to before we call this one?
Nope. I think that's everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. It has been absolutely lovely getting to talk with you. A humongous fan of your work. I hope to continue to see and stare in awe at it, and wish my painting skills were to do them justice for much, much longer.
That's why you print 10 of them each. You print 10 and you just practice, right?
10 snails, 1 snail, nope, trash. 2 snails, nope, trash. We're eventually, at 3D printer fans, we're going to have to come to terms with like, what do we do with all the extras? Because there's way more extras than I'm ever going to be able to touch with a paintbrush.
You're going to have to start making giant dioramas using all of your paints.
I'm just glad they also do my favorite thing, which is the annual membership. You know that I love those.
Yes, I do know you love the annual membership, Kristen. That is
well, now I always have it in my pocket, and I know I'm going to get cool bases. Hopefully it doesn't stress them out too much to know that they have people waiting that are already paid up.
Yeah, that is a question. Like, when they started offering annual memberships, did y'all have to hesitate a bit before? I was like, we have to be sure we're doing this 12 months from now too, right?
Well, I feel like we're going to try and do this for as long as we possibly can. So it was more comforting for us. It's like, oh, thank God, somebody's actually going to stay for 12 months.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. And for the rest of you, if you wish to find more content or support us, you can find us over at printyourgames.com, where you'll also find links to our YouTube and where you can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, iTunes. And if you want to help out, you can do so by giving us a positive review on iTunes, a thumbs up or a like or a share or a subscribe. But wherever you happen to watch these episodes, we appreciate each and every one of you. And until next time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perrin.
I'm Kristen Sowards, also known as Lost Spheres.
And just remember to keep printing your games.
Bye-bye.